that's when Chrysalis loved the actual that song, you know, and that's why it ended up being the title track, and
yeah.
you know.
So was there a lot of pressure going into Broken Heart, you know, as far as the record label? It's like it's make or break time, all that.
Yeah. Well, we had we had Isn't It Time, and Every Time I Think of You, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, they were our major songs which everybody knew us for, and Head First became a cult song now. I mean, it's become, even though it wasn't it was up the charts quite a bit, I think, but it still is one of those songs that everybody wants to hear, but you know, it's still, that whole album is still not as good as, I don't think, in my personal opinion. A lot of people would say you're wrong, and they have their opinion, but my opinion is Broken Heart was a more commercial, soulful record. But Head First, to me, I love still. And we were getting more into rocking it up a bit more, which is great, you know.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
No.
And we still had some good songs on it. One thing the Babies never did, which is why we're still alive today, I believe, is that the songs had character, they had our groove on it, and they were really well written. Whoever came in with it, you know, if it was accepted by the band and we played it, it sort of didn't matter who wrote it. It was if it was a great song, we kept it, and I think that's what that keeps the name rolling. I mean, when we reformed, everybody knew us from those songs, not because of the silly name that we came up with.
Yeah.
But
those songs were part of their life.
Yeah. And today, even today, I still get 20, 30 emails every day thanking me for one particular song that I sang, or for what I've done as part of the Babies with Wally and everybody. But I sang a song called Silver Dreams, and apparently a lot of people have gotten married to it, or you know, it's a soft song, you know.
Yeah, it's a standard to them.
Yeah, and it became a lot of people's favorite, you know. But it wasn't the way the Babies were going, but it was one that became a part of the Babies. We actually did it on Mike Douglas' show, I think. Didn't we? Was it?
Yeah.
Was it Mike Douglas?
In Las Vegas.
Douglas.
Yeah. You ended up playing drums on that one, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Switching it up. Now, talking about switching it up, obviously a big change coming up. Union Jacks, Mike out of the band. Of course, Jonathan Cain, Ricky Phillips coming in. Now, what was the major reason Mike left the band, forced out of the band? What was the impetus for the change coming up to Union Jacks, Wally?
Well, Mike left us during the recording of Head First.
Yeah.
He actually plays on probably, I would say, maybe a third of the record.
Okay.
When we were cutting, you know, basic tracks. I mean, really, you know, during the recording of that record, the company weren't too happy with him, the record company. He was not sort of coming to work every day and being part of the team, you know. And I think in the long run, he kind of shot himself in the foot, to be honest. You know, I think once the record company realised that, you know, he wasn't sort of playing the game and being part of the team, they were kind of disappointed in that. You know, we'd all got a sort of healthy advance as far as some money, you know, to keep us going, and you know, I think of course he got his fair share too, and I think maybe Chrysalis looked at it as like, well, you know, he's not doing the job we're paying him to do, basically, you know, so I think it was
he
more...
became I think he just got married, right?
Yeah.
And he had a kid, and which took up a lot of his time. But he changed, his whole attitude changed. He stopped practicing, and we were moving on, and Wally and I would go around there and go around over to his place and just beg him to just come down to the studio and you know, practice. Come on, you can, you know, we're having a great time. You don't want to be left out on this. And then we talk him into it, and then a couple of days he'd rehearse, and then come down to the studio, and then he wouldn't be able to do certain things that we needed, and or whatever, you know, or he'd get upset with himself, or he just he wasn't into it anymore. He was into being more of the pop star side of it, let's put it, instead of getting down, you know, on your instrument and really.
Because we all know once you have a hit, it doesn't get easier. It gets harder because you got to follow up the hit and keep on doing bigger shows. And
well, you know, I think we thought of it as like, you know, we'd got to that point as a team and as a group, you know, and we needed him. You know, we needed his input. And he would shy away from it, and you know, and blame everybody but himself, and you know.
Of course, it hurt him that we had to bring another keyboard player in, or you know, to do some of his parts, and of course that hurt him. That would hurt me if someone you know, came in and had to do my drum parts. I mean,
but
I'd have been gone anyway.
But you know, like Tony said, you know, we would, you know, individually or together go around and see him, and I would say, Michael, get dressed. You know, he'd walk around in his kimono and drinking cups of tea, and I'd say, get dressed, put your guitar in your case, let's go, I'm taking you down, you know. And he would say, well, Neverson doesn't want me there, and Waite doesn't want me there, and I go, but I want you there, you know, me and Tony want you there. We need you to work on this record with us, you know, we're all in this together, we're a gang, you know, you're letting the gang down by doing this, you know. And he'd go, maybe tomorrow, you know. And it's like, after I think probably a couple of weeks of me trying that, you know, I said, listen, Mike, you know, I can't do this anymore. You know, if you're not going to come down. You
shouldn't have to drag him in.
No. I mean, we lived in the same building, so I had more of an opportunity, but went up to did the same thing as Walt was saying, and he'd still be in that damn kimono. I can see it to this day, with his finger up on a cup of tea, you know. And but he just
lost the drive.
Yeah, just lost his drive, and of course we can't sit around and wait for him to do that. We're in there making records, you know.
Yeah.
I think, you know, with that, and then of course I'm sure Ron Neverson was reporting to Chrysalis Records, and Terry Ellis, who was running the ship at that point, and you know, obviously telling him, you know, that all the other guys are here every day, but you know, Michael's a no-show, and I think that sort of basically led to, you know, the end of it all for him. You know, unfortunate, but it wasn't through lack of trying on.
It was also partly
you know.
we were we had to bring in other people.
Yeah.
To do his job.
When
and of course
he was quite capable
why.
of doing those parts, you know, and being part of the band. I mean, here we were on our third album, you know. Some bands don't get to make one record, you know. And here we are on our third record, and he's throwing it all away, you know. And and then getting upset because we're bringing in somebody else, and it's like, well, if you were here, you'd be playing the parts yourself, you know.
Yeah, Ron's got a job to do. He's got to produce some hits. You know, he's going to pull out a great keyboard player.
Yeah.
Now, if he'd have still had the drive and the need to want to be part of the Babies and keep it the way, you know, as a team, as Wally's saying, we wouldn't have allowed anybody else to come in.
Yeah.
But he was taking us down with him and just bad mouthing, you know. Honestly, he was just bad mouthing everybody, and that's just not good, you know. So
No.
We couldn't bring him back out of it.
Right.
And it's a damn shame, you know.
Yeah.
And to this day, he's still. I don't know what he's been doing, but I know he hasn't done much to bring his career up to spec, but he still, to this day, is very, very sour about Chrysalis Records, and he thinks, you know, that Chrysalis Records and everybody had a lot to do with getting rid of him, and he said some nasty things through the years, which we never buy it on, and we just let him get, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let him.
You just have to let it go in the
let
end.
it go.
Of course.
So we ended up finishing head first as the three-piece. You know, Tony, myself,
yeah, I see
and John Waite.
the three of you on the back there.
And you know, and when that was finished and mixed and released, of course, then it was time to go out and promote it. You know,
Yeah.
and we couldn't go out as a three-piece. So that's when we decided that we needed to find a replacement for Michael. And we started holding keyboard player auditions, and while we were doing that, that was when John Waite announced basically that he didn't want to play bass anymore. He'd rather just sing and play occasional, you know, acoustic guitar. And he said, if we're looking for a keyboard player, let's look for a bass player too, and then I can just concentrate on vocals, you know.
Right.
And so really, that's, you know, it was like, well, okay, you know, that wasn't really going to be the plan, but if that's the way he wants to do it, then I guess we should. Otherwise, you know, we'd be having more problems then. So that was it, you know, keyboard and bass player auditions, and we see a lot of people.
So now was Keith Olsen on board at that point already, or he came after the members?
No, because we were going to go out and promote Head First.
Oh,
you know?
okay, so this is
And
before.
I think we went out with.
Journey.
It wasn't Journey. That came
STYX.
later. No,
STYX.
I think it was with REO Speedway.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
We went out on an arena tour with them because they had that Tuna Fish album
Right.
at the time. So they were riding high, you know, and
Yeah.
that was a great tour for us because we were playing basketball arenas like every other night.
Yeah.
And with them, I think we were out with them for maybe 12 weeks, maybe, you know. And so that was a good tour for us to be on, you know. But meanwhile, that's when we were breaking in Ricky Phillips and Jonathan Cain, you know, having chose those two to be in the band. And they both sang and they both write songs. So we went out on that tour and toured with Head First, and you know, once that had run its course, then it was time for another record, you know, because not so much these days, but back then it was like you write the songs, you rehearse them, you record them, and then you go out and promote them, you know, and try and play as many places as you can, sell as many records as you can, and once it's run its course and you're back to square one, then it's time for another album, you know, and
Yeah.
the cycle would start up again, you know.
It was pretty much an album a year expected at that point.
I think I think the last two were done within the same year, if I remember right. But
I think it was.
yeah, at the start of the year and at the end of the year.
So did the label suggest Keith Olsen? Is that how he came?
Yeah, yeah. I guess it was.
I think there was a few bids going on. You know, a lot of.
I think they were
a few
happy
producers
with.
wanted to do it.
Okay.
You know? And
So people were bidding for the job.
And he was doing Sammy Hagar at the time.
Well, I think Keith was doing Pat Benatar, and Chris.
That's right.
Chrysalis had just signed Pat to the label. What was her big first hit?
Heartbreaker.
Heartbreaker, yeah. And Keith had done that, and then Chrysalis signed Pat to Chrysalis Records, and I think that's where Keith got his foot in the door. You know, it was like, oh yeah, you know, we got a nice little hit going on with Pat, you know, and the Babies are ready to go in the studio again, and of course he was working over at Sound City.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah, that was Keith's studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was actually building his own studio, Goodnight LA, next door. But we recorded in the big room there for Union Jacks, the fourth record.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, it was Goodnight LA.
Yeah.
So Jonathan and Ricky, they contributed to the writing and added to the live show.
When we did the tour, we didn't make them permanent members of the band. We went out on tour with them as like hired guns, just to see, you know, how things were going to work out. So then, when we went back in to record with Keith Olsen and do Union Jacks, you know, Ricky was writing songs and Jonathan was writing, and you know, either one of them was writing with John Waite or, you know, with me or with Tony. So, you know, that's, and then we decided, well, okay, we're going to make you like full-time members of the band now, so it's going to be a 5-piece band now with, you know, everybody getting their fair share. Yeah, so off we went, you know, but now we're going off into a whole different situation. We've quit the mobile recording studio, and now we have a different lineup in the band. Now we're back into a regular studio, and we've got 2 Americans on board who also write songs. Now our sound and our style is sort of kind of drifting away from that British thing that we had originally brought over, you know.
Yeah, it became harder and harder, didn't it, to get us, what I was saying earlier about our sounds and the way we were able to play from those sounds. It was harder and harder to hold on to that, because
Keith had his style, and
Jonathan, you know, of course, you know, would have a big say, and of course Ricky did too. Otherwise, we all had a big say. I mean, there was no one leading, really. I mean, it was they
brought all their influences in, and
so. But at the same time, we didn't get chance. I don't think they tried to get my sound as best we could, but it didn't end up anywhere close to what I normally get. I don't think anyway. And Wally was having the same trouble getting that thing that we need. So we were changing, as like Wally was saying. We were transforming into something else, and a lot of people loved the way we were going, and a lot of people loved our original thing that Wally and I do.
Yeah.
And I think our new record now portrays what Wally and I at least, you know, captured in some of the early days. You know, there's things on the new record I'd love to redo,
Yeah.
but we had to rush it, and you know, we only had like a month to do that whole record in, and but we did get our sounds back, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
and I enjoyed that immensely. But like Wally was saying, it's it was getting harder and harder to keep us all, you know.
Find that balance when what the label wanted and what Keith was known for, and
Yeah.
all the elements.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was becoming a different band in a sense.
yeah. I don't
And
think
then, so you
can-
did On the Edge and Union Jacks pretty much within a calendar year,
I
probably.
believe so, yeah. I
Yeah.
think On the Edge was, I mean, Union Jacks was at the start of the year, and
Mm-hmm.
in the same
Back
year.
in by the end of the year.
Yeah. And in between we had gone out with Alice Cooper. We went out and we toured with the Union Jacks record,
Mm-hmm.
and we joined Alice Cooper on his Welcome to My Nightmare tour,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a good tour for us to be on too.
Mm-hmm.
great guy he turned out to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he even saved us some seats on his plane, and we all flew together.
Wow.
Him and his dancers, you know, because he
Yeah.
had a big stage set up at that
Yeah.
point, dancers and lots of props, you know,
Yeah.
the guillotine and everything,
Mhm.
the snake,
Snake.
Yes.
um, and his band, of course. Davy Johnson was in that from
Okay.
Elton John,
Okay.
and Steve Hunter was in
Yeah.
the band, and yeah, so his band, his dancers, some of his like lead tech, you know, crew guys, and us, and our road manager, we all flew on the same plane, you know, and but it was a good tour. You know, he was good to us. You know, usually opening acts don't get too many lights or can't use all the sound, or
Yeah.
you know, you can have 3 feet at the front of the stage and that's about it. You know,
Mhm.
he was, for what he had on that tour, you know, he
Yeah.
was really good to us, and it was a great tour for us. Again, you know, basketball arenas, and
He did try to take one of your strings off your guitar, though, didn't he? You can only play with 5 strings, not 6.
Yeah.
And gave me 1 stick.
So basically, at that point, the band was evolving. By the end of On the Edge, I know John was
Yeah.
pulled off the stage. He had a knee
well,
problem, and
after the Alice Cooper tour, there were some odd dates with STYX, I believe, and Triumph. I think we went up into Canada and
Mhm.
did some dates with them.
STYX was a long tour, and Journey was the longest one.
Well, Journey was when we were out promoting On the Edge.
Yeah.
Okay.
We came back off, you know, now this is all during the same year, you know.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
release Union Jacks, go out with Alice, and STYX and Triumph I remember playing with. And then when we came back off of that, it was time to go back in again. So it was time to write some more songs, and which some we were writing on the road, you know, at sound check and things like
Mhm.
that. And you know, and then of course when that was cut, then it was time to go out and promote that. So that's when they put us on the Journey tour,
yeah,
which was another great tour for us to be on.
sure.
Yeah.
And
Sid, I spoke to here I go again, but I do happen to see Steve Perry every week. We have a thing that we go to together and enjoy, and he's a great guy, and he even said to me, he said, you know what, the best tour the Journey ever had whilst he was with the band was when the Babies were with us.
Yeah.
So that made me
It
feel
was
good.
the peak of his time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob. I didn't want to
Yeah.
butt in, but I
No,
just
no.
wanted to tell you how what Journey thought of us,
Yeah.
and obviously they had their own ideas of what they were going to do.
Right.
yeah,
with,
that was just, you know, that was like the ideal tour, you know, two bands that kind of musically are very similar and kind of have the same audience, you know. So it was a good ticket if you're a fan, you know. You know, go and see the Babies opening up for Journey, you know, in a basketball arena. I mean,
a lot of hits.
A nice evening out, you know. Yeah, and then we were out with them for probably 14, 15 weeks, you know.
Okay.
All across America.
I think it was even longer than that. Yeah.
Was it? Could have been.
I think it was spread out over a year and a half of different.
No, because you know, when we were done with them, that's when we stayed out on the road and we were doing shows of our own when the Journey tour ended, because we were still out promoting On the Edge, you know, and we were still headlining and we were playing like 5, maybe 7,000 seater, you know, like some of those nice theaters and auditoriums and ballrooms and things like that. The odd club here and there, you know, just to break it up a bit. Yeah, so the Journey tour was over. We were still out on the road doing our own shows, and that's when Waite busted his knee on the stage one night, tripped over some cables or something. Next thing I know, I look down and he's laying on his back in agony, you know, and he had kind of like twisted his knee and messed up torn the cartilage, I think. In the knee. And so that was the end of that show, and he was in agony backstage, and off he went to the hospital, and next day he shows up on crutches, and we did one more show with him on crutches, and he said, I can't do this, you know. He said, I'm in just so much pain, and he said, no, I don't want to go on stage with crutches, you know. So I think we still had like about 3 weeks ahead of us on this tour, and of course that all had to be, I think it was probably postponed at the time more than cancelled, you know, but ended up, that was probably the last show we played as the Babies, you know. And that was when things really turned around, you know, took a big, we came back off of that tour, and John called me and he said, I'm either going to go to New York or I'm going to go back to the UK, but I've got to get my knee fixed. And he said, I really don't think I can do this anymore, you know, this band thing. And because I knew from day one that he always wanted to be a solo artist, you know. Him and I would talk about it all the time, and I would say to him, you know, we're doing really well with Chrysalis, and I'm sure if, you know, you went up and spoke with them, they'd probably say to you, well, we'll give you a 1 album deal, you know. I said, and you can make your own solo album. I said, but we don't have to break up the band for you to do your solo album.
Right.
You know? I said, you can go in, record it. I said, I'll help you with it if you want. If you want to get your own band, that's fine. But let's not throw this band away for the sake of you doing a solo record, you know. Take some time, do it.
We begged him, didn't we? Not, you know, not literally, but I mean, we would talk to him over and over the same story, but he was adamant that he just wanted to be on his own.
He just wanted to be, you know, a solo artist and not be part of the politics involved in being in a band, you know. Yeah. And like Tony said, you know, we tried to talk him out of it. I would say to him, you know, Roger Daltrey has a solo album, but he didn't break up the Who to make it, you know. Yeah. You can spend some time with your record, and then when it's time for the Babies, then you come over to our side of the fence, you know, and then when we're done with that, you can go back and do your thing. But no. So, and of course, and the tour with Journey, we all knew that Greg Rowley was going to be leaving Journey at the end of that tour, and so Journey had their eye on our keyboard player Jonathan right from the very start. You know, there he was auditioning for Journey every night when we were up there playing before them. You know, so like I say, when we came, you know, back off of that, and I got a phone call from Jonathan telling me that he was in San Francisco and he was rehearsing with Journey. But I see that coming anyway. I knew that was going to happen. So there goes John Waite off to New York to get his knee fixed and pursuing his solo dreams.
I think we were pretty much naive to the fact that Jonathan pretty much already had a plan to go with Journey, and John was already planning to go solo, and you know, I think that's what gave Jonathan the ease to be able to say, yeah, you know, I'll join you guys. And so, which was a great move for him, obviously, you know.
Sure.
I mean, he's done incredibly well out of it.
Yeah.
And
still to this day.
Yeah. And Ricky Phillips went to STYX, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it. They play almost every night.
I know.
Every night, the same show. Well, not the same show. They swap it up, but But I don't know how.
Hard-working
years
band.
You know, they're good. They're a good band.
Yeah.
And there again, you know, when we opened for STYX, that's when Ricky first met Tommy Shaw. You know, they became pals, you know, during those shows that we did with them. So Tommy and Ricky knew each other anyway. So once
when they needed a bass player,
because their bass player got sick, didn't he?
Yeah.
And although he still comes out and plays, doesn't he?
Occasionally. Yeah.
That's when Ricky comes out and plays 12 string.
Right.
Well, the bass player does as much as he can. Because he's pretty sick. It's sad.
You know, Ricky kind of fell into that. You know.
Yeah. So that was the end.
Tommy had
the end of the chapter there.
Yeah,
but the songs are still alive, and obviously you went on to play with Rod Stewart together, and you did the Air Supply, and of course you played with everybody, Jeff Beck, and you know, Roy Orbison, the great. And
I got lucky enough to keep going. That's what, you know, and I put my own little tiny studio together, which Wally used to come over.
Yeah.
And we'd write all these great little ditties that still had the BABYS flavor, because we can.
Sure.
Even John Waite said, to tell you the truth, he said the BABYS sound and everything were Wally Stocker and Tony Brock. So even he's admitted it, and I had this tiny little room, you know, same size as we're in now, and Wally used to come over and we'd have a great time, and write some fantastic little ditties and bits and pieces, and get different singers in, you know, and which in fact turned out to be, when we got back together, I knew that I still had all those tapes on a it was an ADAT when the ADATs were big, you know, but of course none of them worked anymore. So you know, and I knew we had all these bits and pieces, but then Wally goes, guess what I got? And he had an old cassette of what we made, you know, of all the songs that we put together, and I don't know how long it was, but it was quite a long time. And the sound of it, you know, was all the hiss, and it probably didn't know if it was ever going to play, go through the whole thing and everything, and a lot of what we did together ended up on ended up on the new record.
I'll have some of that.
Yeah.
So now, where's the title come from?
That came from Wally's dad. In fact, because, well, you should tell the story, but it's wonderful. I mean, that saying, I'll have some of that, is really English, you know.
Yeah.
If you're going to go for, if there's something that you need or you like, you go, oh, I'll have some of that.
Yeah.
You know. But it came from Wally's dad, so I'll let him tell you the story.
Well, you know, that's something that he would say. You know, he was, you know, he was a truck driver actually, and he drove some double-decker London buses, but mainly trucks. He loved to drive trucks, and you know, he would just be mesmerised by American trucks. He would come over, and my mum and dad would come over on vacation, and he'd drive on the highways and see these big rigs, you know, with all the chrome and big Mack trucks, you know, and you know, he would. I remember him because what he would do, they'd fly over and get a rental car, and then he'd make me drive the rental car and show him all around LA and take him, you know, here, there, and everywhere. And my mum, and I just remember driving down, I think it was San Diego Freeway, and you see this, we passed this truck, and it was just like all chrome, you know, and double trailers, and just this huge truck, and he went, whoa, I'll have some of that, you know. And I went, what? He said, well, yeah, I'll have some of that. Look at that truck, I'll have some of that. And that always stuck with me, you know, and I think we were driving to your studio one day, you'd pick me up, and I think we got passed by like the new Corvette or something, and that's when I said, oh yeah, look at that, I'll have some of that, and you started laughing, and he said to me, where'd you get that from? Of course I told him the story, you know.
Yeah.
And then when we were recording, probably a day wouldn't go by without that phrase being used some point during the day, you know. Like you'd do a nice take, you know, and come back and listen to it and go, yeah, I'll have some of that. And it just stuck, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and then we had this track that, you know, like Tony was saying, we had this old cassette with some of these old riffs and, you know, songs on it. And we had that in musical form, you know, that song. I'll have some of that. Of course, it wasn't called that, and it's like we really should record that, you know, that riff song. And so I pulled John Bazaar aside and I said, you know, see if you can write some lyrics around that song and incorporate I'll have some of that on it, you know, if you can. And he said, all right, and he went away and came back, you know, a couple of days later, I guess it was, and he had this whole thing written out, you know, and there's kind of a rap in the middle of it as well, you know, white rapping, I guess.
Yeah.
And,
well, I want you to make it like a audience participation.
Yeah.
Like
call and response.
yeah, you know, and so the audience could you know, just be part
Join
of the
in.
song and well, have some of that, you know, and it was really catchy. So we put the big hand claps in and you know, the whole thing, and tried to do a Stones-ish sort of fun song with it. And it was one of the more up-tempo songs, and to this day we still haven't played it live, and Wally and I we're gonna do it because it's a great track, you know.
Yeah.
Just and we're gonna put it in the set sooner or later. So
Sure. Well, obviously you had played with a lot of other people. I know you played with Jerry Shirley, you did the Humble Pie stuff, and the Steve Marriott songs and all that. But people kept asking you, I'm sure, well, when are the Babies coming back? These are my songs. What's going on with the Babies? And obviously, you know, John's voice not the, you know, easiest to fill. Tell us about the process of finding your new singer and what he brings to the band now.
Well, I was fortunate enough to produce the band. I wanted to do that, and the boys said that's a great idea, and it was my studio, and I, you know, I just knew that I could do it, and wanted to do it, and be the producer that that I always thought I could be, and that doing that album basically gave me enough confidence, you know, to do other things, you know. For I got to produce Keith Urban and that sort of thing, but. John, we went through a bunch of singers. As soon as when I was out on the street that we were looking for a singer, I had singers all the way around the block, pretty much, and the phone never stopped. And we were down to 3 singers, and John was one of them. And he'll still never forgive me, but I got him back about 8 times, you know. And the last time I filmed him singing one of the BABYS songs, I had a backing track of him singing "Isn't It Time?"
Yeah.
And when we looking through the camera at him, and he just had that thing, you know. You could see it through the camera, and then he already had the voice.
So you kind of got the perspective of what the audience would see.
Yeah, I just saw that, and then of course Wally was part of the you know, making sure that it was all keeping it all together, and making it John that was going to still stay the BABYS, and luckily enough Wally loved him too. And so we decided to you know, to pick John, and but he was getting pretty tired of coming down. He had to drive 3 hours to come see us every time. But you know,
patience.
It was worth it. He's a great guy, you know.
Yeah.
And he could have really. Started taking over like a lot of singers like to do, but he knows that Wally and I are still the original members, and he respects that, and he listens to what we say and takes it and runs with it, and he works really hard, you know. And plus he's a good-looking guy, and it was meant to be, I think.
Yeah. You fit the bill, and
yeah.
You guys have a new life, new album, and got shows,
and
of course more shows coming.
Yeah. Well, we needed to make sure that he wasn't gonna. He was gonna be one of the team player.
Right.
You know, because. We already decided, Wally and I said, well, we're not going to do this without each other. I spoke to Wally on the phone, and he said, well, I don't want to do it without you. And he said, yeah, I'm not doing it without you either, so but we said, let's make sure this time that there's no backstabbing and you know, just horrible things said about each other. If you got something to say, bring it up, and
of course,
sort it out.
Talk it out.
Yeah. Everybody's gonna have differences.
Yeah, don't air it in public.
Yeah, and so we had to make sure that everybody would go in, they played the game, you know, and was just being themselves and being natural and having that magic. You know, like I said, when we saw John on the video. Damn, it was just there. It is, you know.
Yeah.
Sing it. we didn't want someone to sound like John, but of course, John's vocals are part of what the Babies used to be.
Yeah, you don't want it too different.
And we did. If we completely changed it, it would be. It's not what we would want to do anyway.
Right.
So, but we wanted John Basaha to do his own thing, but he still had to sing the old songs the way John Waite would sing, you know, in his own style.
Mm-hmm.
And now, you know, we're letting John Basaha stretch a little bit more, and we're expanding as the Babies, as one would hope we would have done in the old days, you know.
Yeah.
Which we did, as you say. We went from we changed in style, and I think what the last record we did is where we would have ended up. You know, go into, you know, sounds and, you know, and so John fitted the bill, and then we decided to get another guitarist, and in fact we had a guy called J.P. Savoni who was with us, you know, helping, and but that didn't work out. It wasn't he for different reasons. It just wasn't the team that we needed, and so we had to find another guitarist, and Joey STYX was one of the many. I'm trying to think how we decided that Joey was going to be the man.
Well, we'd been working with Joey. He's a very good songwriter, you know, and we were putting down our first song back as the Babies, a song called Not Ready to Say Goodbye.
Yeah.
And Joey was, you know, part of the writing team on that song, so we were already familiar with Joey.
Yeah.
And you know, when that vacancy came up in the band, you know, he was given like first shot at it, you know, and that's really where, you know, Joey STYX became part of the Babies.
Joey's a really good songwriter.
Okay.
You know, and you can give him an idea, and he'll run with it, and we'd have to bend it into shape maybe a little bit, you know, just to make sure it's in the Baby style, which is what we went out of our way again just to keep, and we put all of us were put these songs together, and I See You There was our second single. That was mostly Joey. So, but it's still in that Isn't It Time, Every Time I Think of You vein.
Yeah.
Which we love, you know, because I love recording brass and strings.
Sure.
And, you know, and not every rock
Got the
and roll
backing
band can get away with
vocals,
it.
all that great sound.
Yeah.
Reminds you of the past, but it's fresh and new.
Yeah, and it's soulful, you know, if you use it in the right way. And so we didn't lush it up too much, but it was, you know, it was enough. And like Wally says, he was for first choice, and he fit the bill, and he makes us look good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but both John Basaha and Joey STYX were fans of the Babies long before we ever knew them.
They knew the songs better than
Yeah.
we did.
Yeah, and so they knew what we were looking for, you know.
Sure.
As soon as they were approached, you know, it was like, you know, there's not going to be too many changes going on here. You know, we want to keep to what we had. Obviously, you know, bring it up to date, but you know, you must realise that, you know,
You have a signature sound.
Yeah, we, you know, that's the last thing we want to do is to lose that. And they understood completely, you know, and being fans of the band and of the earlier records, they already knew. They kind of had the Babys in their blood even before, you know, we kind of met them. So they knew what we were looking for, and they were comfortable, you know, in doing that.
Well, sounds like a great match.
Yeah, it was kind of, I tell you what it would be kind of like. It would be kind of like Wally and I walking in the bad company.
Yeah.
That's, well, Wally and I know bad company probably every lick that they do better than they do.
Yeah.
Because John Bazaar and Joey STYX knew the songs better than we did when they came in. You know. So they're going, no, you didn't play that on the record. And I was like, oh, you know.
It's a good feeling, mutual respect.
Yeah, it was fun. And they still, to this day, they, you know, they every now and again we'll be somewhere enjoying each other's company, and they'll say thanks for, you know, letting us be part of it. And
sure.
it's kind of really great. Well, we look at them as equals. I mean, there's no, you know, so
it's a band.
Yeah, it's a band thing, you know, and so now they, you know, just last week we went out and they said, I wish you had never joined this band. No, I'm kidding. They love being in the band, and we love having them. So
yeah,
you know,
we're so great to have you guys back. Super excited about the show. We're gonna give everybody the dates, and you know, we hope you guys keep making records, keep making magic. You know, we, you know, love the back catalog, but you know, we want new songs to add to the catalog. So really appreciate you guys doing what you do. It's certainly a part of my soundtrack, and spent a few thousand hours listening to your songs over the years.
Well,
now, in you know, closing, everything you've seen, so many situations you've gone through, Wally, what advice do you have to young musicians or bands or creative people, songwriters, just over the years? Give us a few, you know, little tips on what you would impart on them.
Well, things have changed an awful lot since I first started out, you know. It was a much simpler life back then, very digital life today. But I would say, you know, just pursue your dreams and just, you know, stick to your guns and stay at it, you know. There's going to be some downfalls, there always is, you know, and there's going to be disappointments, but there's also going to be a lot of fun and adventure and happiness and creativeness, you know, and just being creative and staying on top of that. I think, you know, just pursuing your dream that way, you know, never give up. Even when you're down, you know, never give up. And if you want it that badly, then, you know, hopefully doors will open and things will start going right. And so, you know, that's what I would say.
Yeah, follow your heart and don't second guess
Really.
yourself. Don't stick to your guns.
You know, exactly.
Yeah. And Tony, obviously you've got such perspective now in recording new people all the time, and a great song is a great song, no matter if it's analog, digital, or whatever. What advice from your perspective do you have on the creative people coming up?
First off, for me, you know, when I was growing up, you know, one of my favorite songs was "Love Song" by Elton, and or certain people that I've played with. I never dreamed that I would ever be able to be part of some of those great artists. Then, you know, or even get to meet them.
Sure.
You know, and I didn't know Paul McCartney. I mean, I don't. I mean, he's obviously still alive, but I didn't know Paul McCartney. But just to shake his hand one day was just like, you know, I'm never washing this again. So, you know, you still have that. You got to keep the
kid inside.
Kid inside and keep it all alive. But what it is, if it's not in your blood and it's not in your heart, you don't even try, because there's a lot of heartache doing it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ups and downs. And
Do it
the
for
ups
love.
are incredible. The downs suck heavily.
Yeah.
And there are some really, really bad times. I mean, I've had to eat cornflakes out of an ashtray.
Yeah.
In times, you know.
So if you don't do it for the love, you'll give up in a second.
Yeah. Even in those days, we still went up and got up there and did the best thing we knew how to do then. And of course, as soon as you stop loving what you do, then just give it up. You know.
Yeah.
I try. I'm just trying to get. Sometimes if I find a drummer that I think has got it inside of him and wants to do it, I'll teach. But I'll only teach someone that really wants to do it, because it takes a lot of effort out of you to do it. Because, you know, to give them what you've learned over the years. And I'm teaching one guy now, and I can just see that his brain working, his heart's in it. He'll do anything just to sit on a drum kit and do some of the things that I can do, and I'll do the same. He does some things like, wow, where'd that come from? You know, once he's gone, I sneak on the drum kit and try and play it. You know, but you gotta have that love for it. You gotta what I did was take everything I learned everything from all the people that I loved. You know, from all the artists that I grew up with loving and would play on the old record player, you know, the Danisette record player. And I would take the best of everything and I put them together, and that's what became me, you know, that I feel that what I do, you know. And Carl Palmer was a big influence, like I said, because he taught me to read music, which I haven't had much use for, but because you end up playing from here in the heart anyway, and you end up doing what if people hire you, or if you go do something for someone, they want you to do what you do and what you can bring to the table, not what they want anyway. But it was still inspiring to do that with the Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and that they had the same goals and the same. Nothing gets in your way. You know, I just had when I was growing up, when I was 17, 18, I didn't even think that I didn't have a thought that I wasn't going to make it. You know, before that, I was, you know, like I said, when I was listening to the Love Song or whatever, or Your Song it's called, rather, and I never thought I would be able to meet Elton and all that sort of thing, and especially I was in a band with Bernie Taupin called the Farm Dogs, and I'd watch him write lyrics, you know, and I'd look over his shoulder Sundays. You can't say that. He said, "Of course I can. Watch me." You know, and then it comes out on record, and with the record we did, and it's just beautiful. It's magic, you know, and I learned a lot from that, and everything you do in music just takes you to the next step. And like I said, the tough times are so tough. You have to have it in your blood and want to do it and keep it, you know, because it could be easy to give up.
Real easy.
You know, we've done it. People think it's all like a grand life, and when it is grand, it's wonderful. And but Wally and I have certainly kept our feet on the ground, and we, it's just a thrill to be even here with you today, and I appreciate you very much giving us a chance to talk about the old days, and still, and Wally and I look at each other and love it still, and so thank you for that. And but if you're learning an instrument, just make sure it's in your heart. That's all I can say.